a pro-life or an anti-abortion perspective. So if you don't hold that perspective, I'm especially glad you're here. And it's not because you are an important person that I can convert or change. It's because you're actually a human being, just like me. And I think getting to know you is really worthwhile. And I actually think you bring things to the table, if you disagree with me, that could really be helpful to me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But to start things off tonight, we wanted to just, as a group, analyze some examples of conversations about abortion. Okay, so we think conversations can fall into one of three categories. They could be good, they could be bad, and they could be ugly. So Caitlin and Christina are going to do a little drama to show you each of these three types of conversation: good, bad, and ugly. Your job is to figure out which one they are illustrating first.
So I'm going to be pro-life, and Caitlin's going to be pro-choice. So Caitlin, what do you think about abortion?
Oh, I'm pro-choice.
So you're pro-abortion?
No, that's not what I said.
No, but it's what you meant. You think that women should be able to kill their children because equality.
No, I just think that some women are in really difficult
really difficult
circumstances
situations.
and
You know
they
who's
need
in a
abortion.
really difficult situation? The young boy at the abortion clinic.
I just think that some women are
I don't even think you're thinking. I actually think you have like a single cell for a brain.
Did
Like,
you just call me stupid?
yeah, I mean, it's
Are
obvious.
you completely unempathetic to women
You
who are
know,
hurting?
you actually remind me of Hitler in his Palace of the Holocaust, defending genocide.
Seriously, just call me a Nazi.
Yeah, because you're an evil maniac. Exactly. It's what I mean.
Well, you know what? You're a jerk, and I'm done with
Oh,
this conversation.
well, I hope your baby murder arguments are better than your insults, Nazi.
Okay. Good, bad, or ugly?
Ugly cow.
Right? But why was it ugly? Let's just give me some specifics. So no matter what side of the abortion question you are, no matter what beliefs you hold about the Christian worldview, we can all probably have common ground about what's going on here. So why is this ugly? Yeah.
Ad hominem.
Yeah, to the man, right? Lots of, specifically, what did Christina do to Caitlin?
I mean, she called her Hitler.
Called her Hitler, called her a maniac,
One cell brain.
right? She, are you so, like, you're so stupid, you only have one cell in your brain. Okay. What else made this ugly? What else made it ugly? Specific things, yeah.
Only one person was really talking the whole time.
Yeah, Christina, right? And Caitlin starts talking, and then Christina did what to her? Just interrupted her, right? How many of you like to be interrupted? That's what I thought. Nobody I've ever met in my entire life likes to be interrupted. So we're going to give Christina another chance, but I want you to decide, is this version that you're going to see now good or bad?
So Caitlin, what do you think about abortion?
Oh, I'm pro-choice.
Well, if the unborn are growing, they must be alive, and if they have human parents, they must be human.
Okay. I guess I'm just really concerned about women and the fact that some of them are hurting and they might really need abortion.
You know, it's really interesting because some people say the unborn aren't valuable because they aren't self-aware yet. But I don't think self-awareness can be relevant to our value because infants aren't self-aware either. And if self-awareness means that we're valuable, then infants wouldn't be valuable.
Okay. I guess I'm not really talking about the unborn or infants for that matter. I'm talking about women and the fact that some of them are in really difficult circumstances and they might really need abortion.
There are about 1 million abortions every year in the US alone. That's over 2,500 babies killed every day.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's a lot of women in really difficult circumstances who might need abortion.
Well, embryologists like Ronan O'Reilly and Fabiola Mueller have clearly stated that although life is a continuous process, fertilization is a critical landmark because a new genetically distinct human organism is formed when the chromosomes of male and female pronucleae blend in the oocyte.
Wow. We're really smart.
Thank you.
I've gotta go.
Well, I can continue sharing more as you want.
Okay. So good or bad? Right, you don't want to be in this conversation, right? What's Christina doing? Well, is it better than the ugly?
No.
Okay, why is it better?
Didn't
invoke Hitler.
We did not go to, yeah, we did not invoke Hitler. Did Caitlin get to talk this time?
More.
She did, yeah. Well, Christina did have a lot to say, that's true. Caitlin talked, and then Christina talked, and then so that's almost sounds like a conversation, except for one thing. Right. It seems like they're just missing each other, right? What's Caitlin's topic? Women. What's Christina's topic?
Embryology, baby.
The baby, the woman, the baby, right? Now, was Caitlin even necessary to this interaction? Nothing she said made any difference, right? Christina just had her talking points, her agenda, and she kept hitting that agenda. So as a group, I want us to work together now for a few minutes and just try to come up with what could make this, well, let's give Christina some tips. How could she do better? Don't worry. Her ego is fine. What could she do better?
More questions.
Okay, you need to ask more questions, Christina. I agree. And specifically, I'm going to suggest that Christina, well, actually, I'm going to ask you. Do you think Christina should ask mostly questions like Socrates that sort of challenge, or sort of walk you down a path? Or do you think she should ask open-ended questions to try to get to know Caitlin, at least early in the conversation? What do you think?
Open-ended questions.
Probably open-ended, right? She should probably try to get to know what Caitlin believes and then why she believes it. So I'm going to suggest, Christina, asking things like, what do you believe? What did you mean when you said this? How did you come to that conclusion? Why do you believe this? Right? And ask that. We like to say, ask it with an open heart. We don't just ask questions to challenge somebody. That is important in the conversation, but we don't believe we can really challenge somebody's view if we don't even know what the view is. Okay, and you can, this would help in an abortion conversation, but it would help in every conversation, right? And actually every conversation that's contentious on any topic, whether it's a conflict with a roommate or a spouse or a conflict over religion or abortion or whatever, right? Finding out what the person believes would really help early in the conversation. In fact, sometimes I just do that throughout the whole conversation. I might not ever challenge the person's view. I spend the whole time just clarifying their view, and they then start rethinking their position. Then they might ask me questions, and I might start rethinking some of my position. Right? Okay, what else could Christina do? If she asks a question, what should she do next?
Listen.
Yeah, and sometimes we forget this step, right? The listening step. And I would suggest you listen not to refute the other person, but you listen to understand them. And that's going to mean taking all your thoughts about what they're saying and trying to hold them at bay, trying to set them aside, because you're really focused on getting to know this person. That's a really important step. It's really hard for some of us, especially if you've studied a lot of apologetics or you've studied an issue so you know a lot about it. You got a lot to share. You got to get that stuff out on the table because you have the truth. And people need the truth. I totally get that. But I'm going to encourage you, you got to try to set it aside because you really want to learn what this person believes. So you need to listen to understand the person, not to refute them. Okay? Refuting a bad argument is important, but you've got to listen first, right? Okay. What else could Christina do? Any other suggestions?
Practice some active listening, repeating what she says. What I hear you say, or what I think I hear you say is.
Good, and either repeat it back or try to put it in your own words and ask, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Right, and try to have an exchange where we clarify things, right? This is your view. Okay, now I think I understand what you believe. I think I understand why you believe it. And you know what's cool is you could actually have a conversation with someone, no matter what side of an issue you're on, and you could get just to those two things, what they believe, why they believe it. Then you could pause the conversation and say, you know, I want to take some time to think about this. And then could I get back to you? So we get in the mode of thinking we've got to always answer every argument. We've got to always be ready to respond quickly. But sometimes it shows a person that they're valuable or that they have more worth if you even are willing to get back to them about what they're saying. Okay? There's one other thing that I'm going to suggest to Christina that she do throughout her conversation with Caitlin, and that is to say 2 words that can transform a debate and turn it into a dialogue. 2 words. I agree. I say those 2 words probably more than anything else I say. And I try to say it just about in every sentence. So I try to pick out some particular thing that I agree with, that I can say, I think you're making a good point. And I genuinely believe that. I might even say I genuinely think you're making a good point, but I'm more just saying, in my mind, I'm like, I really do think they're making a good point. Okay, so let's see how Christina does. She's to listen, ask good questions for clarification, and then she needs to find common ground. Let's see if she can do it.
Caitlin, what do you think about abortion?
Oh, I'm pro-choice.
Okay, you know, a lot of different people mean different things when they say that. What does pro-choice mean to you?
Yeah, I guess I don't really like abortion, but I do think it should be legal.
Sure, yeah, I also don't like abortion, so we definitely agree on that. When you say that it should be legal, do you think that it should be legal through all 9 months of pregnancy or only up until a certain point?
Oh, definitely not all 9 months of pregnancy.
Sure. What time frame do you think that it should be legal then? Maybe like the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd trimester?
Probably only like halfway through the 1st trimester.
Okay, yeah, well, I definitely agree with you that after 6 or so weeks, it should not be legal. Within that 6-week-ish window, do you think that it should be legal for any reason, or are there specific reasons that come to mind? And maybe an example, just to get your thoughts, this might sound a little extreme, but let's just say that if a woman was pregnant with a girl but wanted a boy, do you think that if she somehow knew she was pregnant with a girl in that first 6 weeks that she should be able to get an abortion?
No, of course not. That's awful.
Okay, I totally agree with you. I think that would be really bad. What if she wanted to use abortion as like a method of birth control within that first 6 weeks?
No, I think people should be responsible. That seems really irresponsible.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be irresponsible. What kind of circumstances then are coming to your mind when you think that it should be legal?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of a woman who's maybe so poor that she can barely care for herself and she finds herself pregnant. I just can't imagine how overwhelming that would feel for her.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you that poverty is a really difficult situation, and I've personally never experienced it. I can't imagine what it must feel like to be pregnant in that situation. Yeah.
Okay, freeze. All right, this conversation could keep going on and on and on, right? And that's the sort of conversation that you probably want to be a part of, right? So I'm going to suggest that these 3 skills that we just walked Christina through, good job, Christina.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest those 3 skills you want to fill every conversation on every topic. In fact, I think you can make an impact on any topic with anyone, anytime, anywhere, if you put those things into practice. I've seen this happen over and over and over again. Let me just tell you one other thing that's really made things better for me in my conversations, and it's reflecting on one particular question. So I'm going to ask that question to you. How many of you believe things that are false? Anybody? Have you talked about this already? I love this. This is such a great response. I believe lots of false things. I just wish I knew what they were, and then I wouldn't believe them anymore. But that takes every debate that I'm in, and it really changes it. So I don't see this other person as an opponent or an enemy or somebody who is the problem. I see them as someone just like me, who's trying to get rid of all my false beliefs and get more true beliefs. And so when I look at someone who disagrees with me, I don't say all those other things. I say, man, I think this person's mistaken about this. I've been mistaken about a lot of things. So hopefully, I'd like to hear what you believe and why. And if it's okay, I'd like to share what I believe and why. And hopefully you and I can get closer to the truth together. So that's more of a partnership mentality. It's filled with humility, right? That's the kind of conversation that is going to be, this person's going to start to be able to relax, right? Because it's going to be okay to be whatever they are, have whatever beliefs they have, and they can start to think through, well, what do I believe and why? Okay? All right. Christina, what do you want to do next?
Yeah, so we're just going to move into, there's a lot of different topics that people bring up around the topic of abortion, a lot of different circumstances that people use to justify abortion. And so I actually just want to start out by talking to you guys about one of the most difficult circumstances that people bring up surrounding this topic, and that's about abortion in the case of rape. Steve, if you can just get the video started, thank you. So this question comes up in nearly every one of our conversations, and it stops every one of my team members in our tracks because it is a very heavy topic. And so just want to process through it first by showing you a video that took place many years ago outside of the Justice for All exhibit. This video, for context, the woman who you'll see, we call her Anne. She is a pro-choice woman, and she has just shared with the crowd that when she was 13 years old, she was raped, became pregnant from the rape, and had an abortion. Now, a couple of pro-choice men or pro-life men are going to engage her, and so as you watch this video, I want you to evaluate how you think the conversation is going, especially in light of what Steve just taught you.
And you can't say
I'm not trying to say I do. I'm not trying to say I
I'm trying to say the choice that I made was incorrect because there was another choice that for some reason looks better to you. This reason being
It
God.
It doesn't look better at first. You have to look past the pain. You have to look past the suffering. You have to look past it.
Right, so I had years of suffering to look forward to if I had made that other choice. So I had to go through my life story.
You're looking at suffering all by itself. And you're
Yeah,
looking, and
suffering
again,
does that to
you're
you.
looking,
When you have a lot of suffering, it's not like it stays on the side, it's usually right in front of your face.
It's hard, but you're always looking at yourself in this situation. You have not thought once about that baby and how
I was a baby at that age.
you were 13. That's not big.
Sorry, I was a teenager. Does that make you feel better?
No, it doesn't.
Would it be better if I was 5 when it happened, so I could tell you that I was more babyish?
You wouldn't have gotten pregnant.
I wouldn't have gotten pregnant if I wasn't raped.
Yeah.
How do you think this conversation is going?
Not well.
Yeah, not well. Now, I think that's pretty obvious, but vocalize some of the reasons why this is such a bad conversation.
He's not acknowledging her suffering.
Yeah, he is not acknowledging her suffering. He actually told her that she needs to look past her suffering. What else?
I'd been better if it had been a girl.
Yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics going on in this video. I mean, she's in a crowd talking about this trauma she went through. If you're ever in a situation like this, just invite the person to speak privately with you so that way she doesn't have to share all this personal information in front of a large group of people. And also, she was obviously hurt by a man, and not to say that men cannot talk about this topic, but I think there's a special sensitivity that needs to be accounted for in a conversation like this. What else?
What he was saying was true, and yes, that is like a good approach to suffering, but you have to, I don't know, like frame it better. Like you can't just hit somebody with facts like, well, there's more than suffering because the suffering is still very real.
Sure, like healing from pain is a good thing, but just telling someone that they just have to get over it, that's not going to be helpful, especially when they are clearly hurting. Did you notice what they were arguing about at the end of this clip?
That was really pointless.
Yeah, what were they talking about?
That she wasn't a baby when she was 13, which is like total. I mean, she was a kid, regardless of how you want to hold that. And then the fact that she wouldn't have been pregnant if she was actually a baby, it's like, it's still awful, like, that's not at the core of this, that shouldn't be at the core of this discussion.
Totally. Yeah, she said, I was a baby at that age. And he goes, you were 13. That's not a baby. What do you think she meant when she said, I was a baby at that age? Do you think she meant she was a literal baby sucking her thumb? No, what did she mean?
Immature.
I was immature. I was young. I was innocent. That shouldn't have happened to me. And I think everyone, pro-life or pro-choice, can agree that she's right about those things. So we're going to continue watching this video. And again, I want you to evaluate what you're seeing, and then we'll come back and talk about the rest.
Okay, but, I mean, the point is you guys are getting off on all kinds of different tangents. The bottom line is it's not right to kill unborn children, regardless of any of the
It's
other
not
issues.
killing, it's a surgical procedure to remove cells.
Well, it's alive when you start, it's dead when you stop. And what is
It's
it?
not alive on its own, it's alive in my body.
So,
It can't live without me, so therefore it's up to me to make that choice.
well, it's an individual human being. It's an individual.
It's not an individual human being because it doesn't have its own
Whose
lungs,
DNA
brain.
does it have?
It has a combination.
No, it has its own individual DNA. It's not your DNA. If it were your DNA, then it would be your body.
It has a combination of the mother and father.
Right, so you're saying it's different than yours, right?
I don't really give a rat's ass about
But that's the
DNA.
whole crux of the issue.
No, the crux
See,
of the
everybody's
issue
saying, is
is that there are
is it a
reasons people make
choice?
choices.
Choice
There's
to
a
do
reason
what you
people
want to
make
do with your own
choices.
body.
And you're saying that the reason they have is just complete crap. And there's never a reason to do this. And I'm telling you, I am a living example of why abortion should be legal, of why abortions should be available to any woman who needs them, so she can live her life.
Those are all wonderful points, but it's still wrong to kill unborn human
Who
beings.
says it's wrong?
Oh, I do.
And?
That's right. And most of these other people.
Right, and I bet you those people in this camp would agree with
Right,
me.
see, they don't understand. See, they're saying that it's a woman's choice to do what she wants to do with her own body. Right? Well, I agree with that. But an unborn fetus is not your body. It has different DNA than you. See, if it were your body, every person has
It's just living
DNA.
in my room,
Well,
right?
just
Is
listen
it
to
renting out a room?
Listen to my one point. Every person has DNA in their body. And the DNA is identical from cell to cell. I was taught that in biology class here.
Fantastic.
So if it's your body, it'll have your DNA. If it's somebody else's body, it'll have different DNA. That's a biological fact.
Why do you care so much about DNA?
Why do you care so much about DNA? What do you think Anne was really asking with that question? That's one way to put it. What do you think she was really wondering?
He wasn't really addressing her concerns.
Yeah, I think she was wondering, why don't you care about me? And I think that's a really, really good question. As pro-life advocates, I think the more we study this topic, the more we have a tendency to get kind of weird. We get so focused on the valuable human being in the womb that we forget about the valuable human being who's standing right in front of us. What does a normal person do when someone says, I was raped and had an abortion? What would a normal person say? What do you think? I am so sorry. Yeah. What else?
How are you doing now?
How are you doing now? Might even respond with silence. You don't know what to say, right? So when someone brings up abortion in the case of rape, it presents two distinct challenges for the pro-life advocate. And this is true of really any circumstance or justification for abortion. This is true of foster care. When someone brings up foster care, right? We need abortion because kids are going to end up suffering in the foster care system. Or we need abortion because women are in poverty, or they're single mothers, or they're in school, right? There's this relational challenge. And then there's also this intellectual challenge. Now, we've already been talking about this relational challenge. When someone asks you about these difficult circumstances, they're usually not concerned with whether the unborn are human, like Bob was really focused on in this conversation, which is not a bad thing to talk about. In fact, we would actually emphasize that we do get to that question of what are the unborn. So they're not focused on that question are the unborn human, they wanna know if you're human. And so we need to take the time to meet the relational challenge by asking this woman if she's open to sharing her story, listening and showing sympathy, and just being a normal person. One of my coworkers, Rebecca Hodavy, she's based out of Nebraska, but many years ago she had a conversation with a student I'll call Michael at Metro State University. And Michael, early on in the conversation, shared with Rebecca how he had a friend who was raped, became pregnant from the rape, and had an abortion. And so Michael asked Rebecca, so what are your thoughts? Should abortion be legal in the case of rape? Now, Rebecca knew that this was not just an intellectual question for Michael, it was deeply personal. And so she actually, she knew she needed to meet that relational challenge. So she sidesteps his question for the time being and asked Michael a few questions for herself. She said, how is your friend doing? Has she been able to get help? Has she been able to talk to women or talk to someone who's been trained to help women process through this kind of trauma? And as they spoke, Michael revealed how his friend went through pain and grief and anger as she sought to heal. But he didn't feel the need to defend her actions to Rebecca because he saw how much Rebecca cared. Now, eventually, Michael brings that question back up again. Okay, so what are your thoughts? Should abortion be legal in the case of rape? Now, I'm going to continue that story and show you how Rebecca responded to Michael, but for now, Steve is going to pass out some of our interactive guides to you guys so you guys can actually practice or putting into practice what Rebecca did with Michael, which is meeting that relational challenge.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. We're gonna hand out one for every 2 people. Okay?
So we'll share a
Actually,
guide.
no, just go ahead and give everybody one. Change mine.
This is our guide that we use for basically all of our training material, so it has a bunch of different topics inside of it. But we're just gonna go to page 27. And this is specifically focused on abortion in the case of rape. So if you open up to page 27, you'll see a script, and it says pro-life and pro-choice. With your partner, I want you to read this script. One person will be pro-life, others pro-choice. But before you get started, I just want to point out that this script is very script-heavy on the pro-life side. And I just want to note that this is not because we think that you should give a whole speech or go on a monologue when talking about this subject. We're just trying to give you ideas, the kinds of things that you can say to someone who is asking you about this question. And also to really help you put yourself in the shoes of a woman who's going through this so you can become more relational when discussing it the next time. So one person pro-life, the next person pro-choice. You're just going to read to the bottom of 27 and then you're going to stop there. Okay, go.
To be able to have
That is really a secondary question. Rape is evil. I don't think I can really understand how much rape is. I don't think we take into account how many ways in which it affects the life.
It's so hard. She gets pregnant.
In a lot of ways. Imagine she may be reminded of her husband. I can see why you would say that. It seems like we agree there really isn't. After all, right now she may be considered I don't think it's easy. Imagine not wanting to recognize it. I met a woman who said that she got it and she some people, it's truly not how she expected. She carries pregnancy to term, feeling all of the pain, labor and delivery. She doesn't even have anything to say about birth. And if she doesn't want to have it, she has to go through it. She may not want to care for the child. She may feel like she can give the child breast. She may feel like she will follow the child's decision. She doesn't want the child to live with the knowledge that
Or she may feel like she don't feel another child has life.
However, it's hard to imagine trying to try and sacrifice this child will deal with for years if she ever met. Another thing that can help us sympathize is to understand you know, someone who's had a personal experience. I agree, and I think the woman who feels sympathized is talking many times feels alone. I don't think I can realize but I do want to give all I can to make sure these women
We're gonna come back together now.
Perfect time.
So, like I said, you don't need to say everything that was in the script as a pro-life advocate, but we're just trying to give you ideas of the kinds of things that you can say, and also help you just think about how heavy this issue really is, because the reality is it does deeply affect women who do go through this experience. So, like I said, Michael brought up that question again to Rebecca after she had showed sympathy and met that relational challenge, and he asked her again, so what are your thoughts? Should abortion be legal in the case of rape? And so in response, Rebecca said, Michael, I'm willing to share with you what I think, but I want you to know that it might be really hard for you to hear. And Michael said, that's okay. I can tell that you care about women who have been through this. So Rebecca continued and said, imagine that we have two women who've both gone through the traumatic experience of rape. One woman, and both became pregnant from the rape as well. One woman has given birth, and now her child is 2 months old, and the other woman is currently 2 months pregnant. This is a question that I asked myself when processing through this scenario. Should both women have the right to kill her child? And Michael said, no, of course not. So then Rebecca asked him a few questions about the differences between the two children. And now earlier in their conversation, Rebecca actually had talked to Michael about whether or not the unborn was a human being. Because ultimately, if the unborn are not human beings, then who cares about abortion, right? It's like removing a tumor, a skin cell, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if the unborn are human beings, then that would mean that abortion is taking the life of a human being. And so Rebecca had drawn that point out and shown that and demonstrated that to Michael earlier in the conversation. And so because he had understood that earlier, he saw what Rebecca was getting at. If the unborn really are human beings, as they had agreed earlier, then the unborn should be protected in the same way that we protect infants, even if they came about through rape. Now, it was at that point that Michael looked at Rebecca and said, I see what you're saying, and I understand your logic, but I just can't say that abortion should be illegal in the case of rape. So Rebecca asked Michael, Michael, is it possible that your heart just isn't ready to go there yet? Maybe you see the logic, but your heart really hurts for this woman you care about. And Michael said, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So Rebecca didn't push the discussion of abortion in the case of rape further. She knew that Michael needed time to process through these things by himself. Rebecca couldn't change his mind for him. And that's true of any conversation that we're having on any topic, right? We cannot change the person's mind for them. That's going to be ultimately between them and God, right? So I just want to take a look at the kind of analogy that Rebecca drew out for Michael. So she brought up these two cases, right? These two women who have both gone through the traumatic experience of rape, both became pregnant from the rape, and both are caring for a child that resulted from rape. What is the difference between these two cases? It's not a difference of circumstance, right? The difference is that the child is in a different stage of development. And so when answering that question of whether or not abortion in the case of rape is right or wrong, whether or not it should be legal, we have to first answer one central question, which is what Rebecca had talked about earlier. What are the unborn? Because like I said, if the unborn are not human, then abortion is fine. But if the unborn are human, then abortion is killing a human being. And so when dealing with really any circumstance like poverty or foster care or single motherhood, the first thing we need to do is first acknowledge the difficulty of these circumstances, meet that relational challenge, but ultimately, in order to decide whether or not abortion is justified in that circumstance, we have to answer that question, what are the unborn? So I want you to go to page 12 of your interactive guide. And you'll see at the top, there are 4 bolded words here. These are 4 steps that Rebecca took in her conversation with Michael to demonstrate that we need to answer that question, what are the unborn? And so the first step says agree. So this is finding common ground. This is meeting that relational challenge. And then the second step is apply. What this means is this is taking the justification that the person is posing to you and applying that justification to a human being outside of the womb. You can do this to like a 2-month-old or a toddler. And so in this case, Rebecca said, what if a woman who had been raped wanted to end the life of her 2-month-old because it was reminding her of her traumatic situation? Can she kill her 2-month-old because of that? And then in general, the pro-choice person will say no. So then if they say no, you're going to go to step 3, which is asking why she can't end the life of the unborn in that scenario. And generally, the response you'll get is because that 2-month-old is a human being. Now, what we want to do as pro-life advocates is tie these 2 scenarios together because the pro-choice person is coming into this conversation with the assumption, generally speaking, that the unborn is not a human being. And so now we need to tie it back to help them see that the reason why we're pro-life is because we do see them as human beings. And so if they are human, then shouldn't we treat them the same? So that's the step 4, step. This is like the light bulb moment. So saying something along the lines of, if the unborn were to be human like the toddler or like the 2-month-old, then shouldn't we protect the unborn like we protect the 2-month-old in that situation? So I'm going to have you with your partner read the imitate script here, just so you can experience the 4 steps of trotting out the toddler. And then you'll see how it could be used like in the circumstance of poverty as an example. So top to bottom on the imitate on page 12. Whenever you're ready, go.
Look at that. I think you're very self-centered.
So do you agree we should have this way
We should do it.
Very different in circumstances.
Maybe visualization's not the right word.
We're gonna come back. Does poverty matter? What do you think? Is poverty a difficult situation that matters and we should help women who are going through it? Yeah. I think everyone pro-life and pro-choice can agree that poverty does matter. The question or the difference is that the pro-choice person is generally coming into the conversation with the assumption that abortion prevents a poor child from coming into existence, whereas the pro-life advocate sees that abortion takes a poor child out of existence by killing her. So talking about poverty, it can be helpful at some point to talk about solutions and how we can help women, but debating poverty isn't actually going to help us move forward as far as deciding whether abortion's right or wrong, because we actually don't disagree on poverty. What we disagree on is whether or not the unborn are human beings. And so using this kind of 4-step process with someone on a circumstance can help you bring that to the light and really demonstrate that we're not disagreeing on whether these circumstances matter. We disagree on whether the unborn is a human being. So I just want to give you guys an opportunity to kind of put these 4 steps into practice. As a reminder, they're on your page if you need to refer to them, but agreeing is just finding lots of common ground. Applying is taking their justification and applying it to a 2-month-old or a 2-year-old, for example, and asking them if that would be okay, if that's justified. And then when the pro-choice person says no, it's not justified, then asking them why it's not justified. Now, you don't want to do this in like a condescending tone, assuming that making them feel stupid by asking it, but genuinely just curiously why is it that you don't think that it would be okay in that situation? And then the A step is tying the 2 scenarios together. So you just read about poverty. I'm going to give you a different circumstance, and I want you to take me through these 4 steps. So if we don't have abortion available, then there are going to be a ton of children, a lot more children in the foster care system. It's already overcrowded, so we need abortion available. How can you find common ground with what I'm saying? Even if you can't agree with exactly what I'm saying, how can you agree with the heart behind what I'm saying?
I agree that foster care is a very difficult situation and that we should do everything we can to help children who are in that situation.
Perfect. Yes, I agree that foster care is a difficult situation and we should do everything we can to help children who are in that situation. Okay, who can apply my justification to a 2-year-old or some other young child?
Do you think it's okay for the kids that are already in foster care for them to be killed?
Definitely not.
Why not?
more there,
That's crazy, like that's murder.
True.
You can tie the two scenarios together. If the unborn were to be human, like those kids, you can finish the sentence.
He really teed you up.
And shouldn't we protect the unborn, like that kid?
Yes, then shouldn't we protect the unborn like we'd protect those kids? Absolutely. My response is going to be, well, I don't even see that as analogous because the unborn aren't human beings like those kids. Now, that's exactly where you want to be because now you are focused on that question, whether the unborn are human. So now you can ask them, have you looked into the embryology of when human life begins? And maybe get them started first on the biology and then maybe talking more about that topic and moving on from there. Okay, so we're going to try this another time with a different circumstance. So as a pro-choice person, I'm going to say, well, what about if we make abortion illegal, then we're going to be forcing women to be single mothers. And I don't want women to have to be single mothers.
I agree that it's not great for mothers to be single mothers with a kid or something.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Do you think that if a single mother already has a child, age 1 or 2, that it would be okay for them to kill that child?
Definitely not.
Why do you think that?
I mean, it's illegal.
Do you just say it's illegal, or do you go a little bit deeper, like ethically or something?
I mean, it's bad parenting.
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to take it down a certain way.
So when someone doesn't give you that first answer that it's human, which sometimes happens, I would just ask, why is it illegal? Or why is it bad parenting?
Supposing it weren't illegal, would you still think it's wrong?
Oh, absolutely.
Why do you think that?
I mean, that's harming a human being, like that's bad.
Totally.
So then shouldn't we treat the child of the prospective single mother the same way?
I mean, I don't think it's a child though. Right, there you go. Now you're back ready to talk about that question, what are the unborn? So just a couple pointers here. You guys are doing a great job. When I'm in conversation, sometimes just if I were to go on or do this apply step and just say, well, can she kill the 2-year-old for that reason? It sometimes feels a little blunt and abrasive. And so I like to soften the statement. So I'll say, hey, I think we'll agree on this, but I just want to hear your perspective. Let's imagine that we have a woman who is a single mother, or maybe she was actually married and then her husband died. And now she is left a single mother and she's really struggling to take care of her kids. This is a very hard situation, but I think we'll agree though that even though she's struggling as a single mother, she can't end the life of her kids in order to solve her tough situation. Would you agree with me on that? Yes, okay. I thought you would agree with me on that. Why is it that you think that she can't end the life of her children in that circumstance? Because they're human. So you see how that kind of softens the thought process? So that's just one tip for when you're using these steps here. We're gonna do one more and then we're gonna move on. Steve's gonna take us to the next part. So what if a woman, what if a woman was raped? Shouldn't she be able to get an abortion?
I agree, rape is terrible. Is she alright?
I mean, I have a friend who was raped and she actually became pregnant and had a miscarriage, and that was also really hard. I mean, she's, I guess, doing better than she was right after it happened, but it's still really hard for her to process through.
You know, it seems really tough. I'm sure there's some people who would be willing to talk to her about that and get her some help.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think she's been in counseling, so she is working towards healing. Wants to find some more common ground.
Yes, I agree with you. Rape is an absolutely terrible situation, and I am deeply sorry for your friend. I think that we should really do everything we can to help women who are in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm just curious though, like I understand, obviously rape is bad, but I'm just curious from your perspective though, do you think that it should be an option for women in general to be able to make the choice of an abortion in the case of rape?
You can pose a hypothetical of if they're different women and they both get raped and both become pregnant. One allows or keeps her baby and to term, and the other one aborts. So is the one has now a child, the one has they both have the bad memory of abortion, of being raped. But the other one has a compounded problem of going through an abortion and making a conscious decision to end that life. So now she's got extra problems.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure for some women, abortion could be another trauma. I don't think abortion's easy to go through at all, but I at least think that it should still be an option for women. I think a woman can decide for herself whether it's worth the chance of struggling from that memory of the abortion. So I think it should be on the table.
What if a woman did not get an abortion because she didn't decide or didn't want to at the time, but now she has a child who looks like the father, so he reminds her of him? Would it be right for her to kill the baby then?
Oh, definitely not.
Why do you say that?
I mean, at that point, like, it's a living, breathing human being.
I agree. Do you think that also applies even if the baby had not been born yet?
I mean, I think maybe like in the third trimester, but before then, I don't think it's human, and so I think she should have time up until that point to decide. Okay, can pause there. Now you're ready to talk about whether or not the unborn is a human being. So obviously this is a very heavy subject, but I just want to encourage you that if you take this slowly with people, I talk about this all the time in all my conversations, and I like to highlight whenever I talk with the toddler and they say that she can't kill the child. I'll say, notice how us saying that she can't kill her toddler is not us saying that we don't care about her or her baby or her trauma. We're saying, I care so much about you and I want you to have choices. I just want you to have choices that benefit both of you and that don't add more violence to an already violent situation. So I really try to emphasize that common ground, that we're not barbaric for saying she can't kill her 2-year-old for this reason. We're actually just trying to defend both of their rights. So that can be helpful sometimes to add on top of that as well. But we're going to move on now. Steve is going to come up here and he's going to take you through another topic. So we'll take it away.
I loved what I started to hear there in this last dialogue. You were changing the script, which is exactly what we intend. So what we put in front of you is our training material that when we do a 6-hour seminar and teach pro-life advocates how to dialogue about this topic, we put those scripts there just to get you started, and we really intend for you to change it and put it in your own voice. This is not about say it exactly as I say it. I want you to say it the way you would say it. Let this material just get you started. Now, I'm in just a couple minutes, we're gonna open up for questions, because in a group like this, I know there's people who disagree with me, and I'm just dying to hear what you think and let other people sort of speak into the this forum. And so I'm gonna try to create a place where you can share your ideas or comments, or even just ask questions. We could talk about and maybe even create some dialogue among us. I like to do Q&A a little bit like a dialogue if you want to, or you could just ask a question and just say, you know, just answer my question, right? But sometimes I like to dialogue with people in this kind of setting, and it's great if you disagree, because I want the truth to come out, and you might be right, okay? I wanted to just tell you why we put this slide up like this, but because of the material we just covered, I think it might make sense to you why we changed the slide to look like this. Abortion is fine if. So if you just remember that, it can get you through a lot, right? If what? Abortion is fine if what? If the unborn is not a real human being, right? So can I kill this? Sure. Unless it's a human being. Then can I kill this? No. Not for most reasons, at least, or generally speaking. Right? We can talk about specific circumstances if you want to in a few minutes. But that's what this whole graphic is about, because it kind of can help you keep centered or oriented. I actually think it's a good thing, not just for pro-life people who are trying to make conversations productive. Remember, all this stuff we just talked about was not about refuting the pro-choice person. It wasn't about criticizing the pro-choice person for bringing up poverty. It was about saying, yeah, I totally agree with you that we want to help women not be single moms or not be in poverty. We want to help kids not be harmed in foster care or whatever. It's to just clarify that, right? And to bring to the surface that there's this other question that you're going to have to resolve in order to answer the question, is abortion right or wrong? Or should it be legal or not? I happen to believe that that's the central question when we talk morality and legality, but I don't think it's the only question. And I'll clarify what I mean in a few minutes about that. I want to go ahead and shift to just giving you a quick sketch of how I would make a case against abortion, so that then in your questions you might want to push against that, or you might want to bring up some alternative. But I was on the campus of Colorado State probably about 15 years ago, and we had a big exhibit up that showed pictures of the unborn before and after abortion. You could see some of those images from about 100 yards away and understand them. So this is a controversial exhibit, and I, at one point late in the day, there was a gentleman looking up at our exhibit, so I walked up to him, and we began a conversation, and it was very productive. I was having such a good time talking to him. But there were some other people there that day. They all had blue shirts on, and they were protesting the exhibit. And these gals decided that even though this gentleman and I were talking, this was not our conversation, this was their conversation. So they jumped in and interrupted and sort of took it over. And then I got a little frustrated, so I started talking over this gal who had interrupted me. So then it was like, we're both interrupting each other. So at one point I said, wait, hold on. I don't even think you know what I believe. Could I just have even 1 minute to just tell you what I think? And then maybe you could respond? And her friend, this actually happened, her friend's like, okay, go. So she's timing me, right? And I've got 1 minute. So I'm gonna give you essentially what I said to those women that day, as a way to just get in front of you, the way I would make a case against abortion. And then we're going to open it up for questions, and I'm going to invite my team to just be ready to answer questions, and we'll dialogue, okay? So here's how I responded when the stopwatch was started. I said, if the unborn is growing, it must be alive. And if it has human parents, it must be human. And if it's integrating its body systems for the good of the whole, it must be an organism. Not only that, it has the one thing that we all have equally that demands that we treat each other equally, a human nature. And that's why sexism is wrong and racism is wrong, because it ignores that human nature and focuses on surface differences. I don't think we should do that. I think we should focus on giving equal rights to anyone with a human nature. But that means the unborn's equal too, and we should treat them equally. So that's my basic case, all right? I'm just trying to give you a sketch. So let me just unpack that briefly, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. You do have more in your interactive guide about this if you want to look deeper. There's some different scripts that will help you follow our argument the way we would generally have it in our minds when we're talking to someone. Now, most of my conversations, you'll see in the interactive guide, if you decide to take it with you tonight, you don't have to take it. I'll take it back if you don't use it. The different scripts follow on from each other. So there's like a continuation. So you sort of get a picture of the way one conversation could go. Most of my conversations don't go that way. Many of my conversations start at the end. You'll notice the end of our script has to do with bodily rights. Many of my conversations start with a person saying a woman has a right to do what she wants with her body. We can talk about that in a minute. So let me just unpack this 1 minute sound sort of response that I gave. First, I defended the idea that the unborn is a living human organism biologically. And then I pointed out that if sexism and racism are wrong, they're wrong because they ignore the fundamental similarity that all of us share, and they focus on either an arbitrary or a surface difference instead of focusing on that thing we all have the same. And I think the only good reason to believe in things like equal rights is because we all have something the same. And I think human nature is the thing, or humanness is the thing we have the same. So if people have fundamental human rights or have fundamentally an equal right to life, it would be because they have that human nature. Because the embryo or the unborn has that human nature, we should treat them the same way that we treat each other. So that would mean that we shouldn't kill the unborn for most of the reasons, or maybe all the reasons, that women have abortions, because they should be treated equally. Okay? Let me just say one thing about bodily rights, and then I'm going to invite your questions. Many people, once I make this case, they might even agree with it. Now, it wouldn't be that quick, right? But we might go back and forth about different theories of personhood, or who has rights and value. And is this really true, that human nature is the thing that grounds our equality? And we could go back and forth. But let's say I've convinced somebody of that. Sometimes the person will then respond, okay, the unborn is a person just like me, or is equal to me. But because the unborn is in the woman's body, and she has a right to do what she wants with her body, then I think it should be legal to kill the unborn, even though the unborn is a real human. Now, you can see that that's a different kind of argument. That's why I said earlier, I don't think it's just one question. I think that's the central question: is the unborn a human being? But there's another question, which is, what do we do now? Because if the unborn is a real human, turns out the unborn's inside of somebody else's body. And I would submit to you, it's really hard to create a philosophical thought experiment that's analogous, that isn't just another example of pregnancy. So then you have to figure out, well, what are you going to do? Does the woman have a right to her body such that she should be able to kill the unborn? Okay, we can talk more about that, but I want to just encourage you to not make the biggest mistake that pro-life people make. So if you're pro-life here tonight, you're against abortion, this is for you. If you're pro-choice, I want to know what you think of this later, okay? Here's the biggest mistake pro-life people make. Woman says, I have a right to do what I want with my body. And the pro-life person puts up a meme that says, it's a pregnant woman, it says, this is your body, this is not your body, and points to the unborn. How many of you have seen that meme? Okay, some of us. Or they might give this, that's essentially the same response. Woman says, I have a right to my body. And our response is, no, you don't. No, the unborn has a body too. No, the unborn has a body. I'm just going to suggest to you, there's a different response that's really important, which is, I agree with you. Your right to your body is so important. Women's right to their body has been trampled on throughout history. It's being trampled on today around the world. It's being trampled on in America through things like domestic violence, rape that doesn't get prosecuted, other kinds of, like women around the world being forced into slavery, girls being forced to have sex until they die, a tortured death. This is horrific. It's an assault on a woman's right to her body, and I'm right there with you. We have to do everything we can to protect a woman's right to her body, generally speaking. Now, if I start making a case about the unborn's right to his body, after that, doesn't it sound different? Sure, the unborn also has a body. Do we need to speak up for the unborn who also has a body? I believe we do. But it comes across very differently in the context of agreeing and trying to actually be the biggest advocate against all of these horrific things that have been done to women and continue to be done. Okay, does that make sense? I'd love to hear what you think. Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions from anybody or comments. So the floor is yours. We're just going to keep our mouths shut until we respond. Who would like to be first? Yeah.
Sure. What advice do you have for men engaging with women in these conversations? How to do that wisely?
Yeah, and do you mean men who are pro-life or men who are pro-choice?
I suppose pro-life, yeah.
Okay. I think it's a sad thing that it's become really common for people to say men have no right to speak on this issue. And so we have a little bit of an uphill battle as men to try to make a case, and I appreciate when women actually make this case, that everybody needs to speak on this issue because it's a moral issue that affects all of us, and also, and also affects millions upon millions of unborn children of both sexes all around the world every year. There's about 13 million abortions in India. Is that a concern? Does anybody have a concern about that? I think it's right for all of us to be concerned about that. And so I don't really think sex is relevant. Your sex is relevant to, or your gender, whatever term you want to use, is relevant to whether you can say, I have an opinion about whether that's right or wrong, whether it should be legal. But I will admit that in some conversations, a person makes it very clear to me they don't want to talk to a man, right? And so I just, I'm very thankful for the women that work with us, volunteers and our staff, and because we can just sort of get out of the way at that point. But I'm not going to give up my voice or my, I'm not going to stop speaking up until, I mean, I guess I could if there were enough women who were speaking up about this topic and I could just step to the side. But almost nobody talks about this topic in a substantive way that's really productive all throughout the country, in churches throughout the country, on campuses. I don't think most of the conversation is productive, so I want to step into that and try to help it to be productive. I think it does. I think it's important for us to be really, to use the approach that we've been sharing with you tonight. I mean, if we try to agree with people more and don't just contradict them, if we are relational and then intellectual, and we use that general approach, I think that could really help. But it doesn't mean that everybody's gonna accept you into the conversation. Does that help at all? Do you have a response to it? Like, do you want to talk about it at all?
I guess, yeah, there's just that, sometimes there's that pushing away. It's like when certain women don't want men to have a word in the conversation. But I think you raise a good point that it is important for everybody to have a say in the conversation.
Yeah, I do think if the unborn is not a human being, then when we're talking about a pregnant woman, there's only one person in the picture. So it makes a little more sense on that view for the woman to be the only one to speak about that. Because it's only affecting her. Now, it is a little bit odd, even if it's something that only affects women, for men to literally not be allowed to have an opinion about it. So sometimes in the conversation, what I try to draw to the surface is that it's really only men with my perspective that are supposed to shut up. Because if men are pro-choice, well, they're just right. But that doesn't seem to be, now it's not about gender, it's about the position. It's actually more about saying, if you're pro-life, shut up, right? Or if you're pro-life, please stop talking, which is a little bit of how some people interact with our outreach events.
Doesn't a man who's pro-choice have ulterior motive?
I'm sorry?
Doesn't a man who is pro-choice have ulterior motives?
So it's an interesting point that you're making. Is a man who's pro-choice, does he have ulterior motives? Maybe explain a little bit what you mean, and then I'll give my thought on that.
So if abortion is a viable option, then I, as a man, am therefore free to impregnate as many women as possible because they can always just get an abortion and there's no consequence.
Yeah, so I've talked to a lot of pro-choice men over the years, and that may be a part of it for many pro-choice men. I'd be interested in hearing other of my team speak to this. I will just say one thing. I think a lot of men that I've talked to just feel like it's inappropriate for them to talk about the topic.
Oh yeah.
It's inappropriate for me. Now, whether it's convenient for them or for their sexual habits or whatever, I'm not sure that, I don't know if I can know the motivation of any of these men unless I talk to them, right?
No. Well, I guess my experience is I don't see a lot of men who are really out there being vocal about pro-choice. You know, they're kind of letting the women take the front on that. And if they are vocal about it, then I'm maybe a little suspicious why you are so vocal.
Yeah, I think we'd have to ask them. I have seen a lot of men be pretty bold and forceful with us about their pro-choice view. They think that they're advocating for women. But again, I'm sort of back to this graphic again. Like, that would make a lot of sense if the unborn's not human, because the woman's the only one in the picture. Anybody from my team want to speak to this? Do you think men, pro-choice men are typically...
I wouldn't want to stereotype them. I can't help but imagine if there isn't an underlying, rationale for men to be pro-choice and not speak strongly on right or wrong.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are some men who do have that thought process and that belief system. I also think that some men are pro-choice because they've just been beaten down so long and told that they're not allowed to speak up on this issue that they default to pro-choice because they really feel like they have no other option. which is what one of the things I really enjoy about going on campus doing is telling them, actually, because you're a man, you should have a say on this topic, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. And especially because one particular and special thing about men is that they're called to be protectors.
Yeah.
And if the unborn are human, then you actually have an obligation, a duty to protect and defend them. And so it kind of puts back in their minds that question of, is the unborn a human being? Or if they're a pro-life man and they're afraid to speak up, it's that reminder that they actually have a duty and a call to speak up for those who are vulnerable. This is true outside of the womb, and it's not any different inside of the womb as well.
Okay, can I take one more question, or did you wanna?
Oh, no, I also had a question, but you go first.
Yeah, in the back with the hat.
Yeah, so I just piggyback on what you said. A lot of the young men that I speak to about abortion with the Students for Life Club here on campus, they're good guys, and they just want to do what's best in their eyes or in the world's eyes for the woman. And so what they would usually say is, if for example their girlfriend got pregnant, they would say, well, whatever you choose to do, I'll support you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you decide. And so like the big task that we have is to like kind of foster that courage for them to discern through the logic of this debate, because they are thinking logically, because they want to do the best thing. They want to have the best outcome for their spouse, for their girlfriend, for whatever. But the irony is, whatever you want to do, they're actually making no impact at all.
Yeah.
And the statistics show that a man that's willing to stay side beside his girlfriend who's had an unplanned pregnancy, the chances of her carrying through with that pregnancy just skyrocket.
Oh, yeah.
And so like that's what our task is, like as men, is to like kind of encourage them to grow in courage, really. Yeah. And to support that, and to suggest that it's the more masculine thing to support women through that. Yeah.
Luke.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just piggybacking off of that a little bit, one of the most common responses we hear from friends, family members, campus people is, I personally don't think abortion is great. Nobody really likes it, but I don't want to enforce, right, that rule or that regulation or that worldview or belief on everyone. That's really strong, and especially usually these conversations are political, with should we enforce this legally or not. What would you say to someone like that? I know you have it in the packet towards the end there, but yeah, what would you say with that idea of, I don't like it, but I don't know if I can enforce that?
Yeah, so there's some material in the interactive guide on page 37 on this topic that you can read later. But let me just give you a couple of things to think about. The first is, I think it's really important to not just contradict the person or challenge them, but to agree with their concern. I think it's important in a pluralistic culture like ours, or country like ours, not to put all of our beliefs into the law. So if somebody is concerned about putting their beliefs into the law, it makes a lot of sense. So I've asked a lot of people with this position, they say, I'm personally pro-life, but I think it should be legal. Why are you personally pro-life? And they'll say, because I'm a Christian. So then it makes sense. If the only reason that you are pro-life, that you think abortion is wrong, is because you're a Christian, then how could you put that into the law? It sounds like putting a certain view of communion or the Eucharist into the law. Or it sounds like putting a certain view of baptism into the law. You must be baptized when you're an infant, or you must be baptized when you're 7, or you must be baptized by a priest, or you must be baptized. We don't put those views into the law, and that's how it feels to the person. Now, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if they've thought about it at all. But this is the sort of giving them, sort of bolstering that position or trying to understand it, right? But then my question is, well, tell me more about why, because it's just that you're a Christian, or is there, what's going on with abortion that you're against it? Why are you against it? And usually people are against it because it kills a baby. So then you could just ask, well, it sounds like, let me just see if I can say your position back to you. It sounds like you think abortion kills a baby, but you're only personally against the killing of babies, and you think it should be legal to kill babies. Now it actually doesn't sound like a particularly Christian view. It sounds like a human rights kind of issue. And I've seen many, many people move really quickly from thinking abortion should be legal to not legal simply because I walked them through a couple of questions. Like they just never thought about it. That this was a human rights concern, not just a sort of a sectarian concern. So there's more on, about how to do that in dialogue form in the interactive guide if you want to take that. Squire, yeah.
Just
and
a
then I'll get
remark
to you.
on are men precluded from this conversation. It seems like any argument that we can make that men are precluded from this conversation because we are biologically precluded from pregnancy would apply to an analog we've been talking about all night. It seems if that were the case, the men would also be precluded from recognizing the evil of rape, since we're statistically precluded from rape.
Right, but we can speak out against rape, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yes.
I hear a lot of people argue or like bring up the fact that like if it's medically necessary for the mother, like for her life, is that really ever the case? And like how would you respond to that?
Thank you for asking this question. I smile because our staff, we have a sort of running, it's not a joke because of the topic, the woman's life being in danger, but this happens to us almost every event. We do training or we do a presentation and the time is just about up and somebody asks about the most difficult topic to address. Okay, so I'm really glad you brought it up. I'm not criticizing that. I can't give a simple soundbite answer. So I'll just say a couple of things. I'm going to point you to our interactive guide. There's one page on the life of the mother, circa page 30, 40, 42, something like that. 35. Okay. What? 35. 35? Oh, okay. On page 35, we have some thoughts on the life of the mother. Probably the most important thought, I would say, is the thing that we've been hammering all night. Be relational, then intellectual. I had a volunteer at our poll table. Should abortion remain legal? Woman comes up to him. They start to talk about the unborn and arguments for and against. And then she says, my aunt died because she couldn't get an abortion in Chicago. And the volunteer said, now, I think you said that the unborn was not valuable because it was dependent, but aren't 2-year-olds also dependent? Like he just keeps going with the argument. And she sort of backs away from the table. And her friend's like, let's get out of here. And she's like, you're so kind. And then they just walked off, right? Now what's really apparent, like this is what's like screaming at us from this conversation. This woman said that her aunt died. And we couldn't stop for a moment and just say what? I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds like she was really important to you. How are you doing? Right? And just be relational. So I'm giving you permission, whatever side of the issue you're on, to use your common sense and be sympathetic to what people are expressing. Same thing with life of the mother. Somebody brings up life of the mother, we don't need to start with the intellectual. Well, there are very few circumstances that I start with, I don't want anybody to go through that. And that is really a difficult circumstance. And I don't have a simple answer. So that's probably the most important thing. The second most important thing to remember is almost all abortions, let's just say the vast majority, have nothing to do with life-threatening circumstances. The woman is perfectly healthy, the baby is perfectly healthy. So we would call that an elective abortion versus what someone might call a medically necessary abortion. These are very different. So whatever we might think about medically necessary abortions, can't we all agree that we should stop killing innocent children because of reasons, the most common reasons, like a woman's too poor, I already have enough children already. 19% of women say that's their most important reason. I already have enough children. Can we agree those are not good reasons, right? And then we can address the life-threatening circumstances. Here's the only other thing I'll say is that if you wanna know more about that topic and you wanna go deeper on life-threatening circumstances, you can email us. Our email address is at the bottom of the interactive guide. Or you can go to our website that's on the board over there and just click the contact link and just send us a message. I will personally try to send you some of the research that we've done on that topic. But what I will say is, it's really complicated. Even figuring out if there are any circumstances where the only way to save the mother's life is to do an abortion. It's very rarely that simple. Now, that's the way I would want to frame it, to try to figure out, is it right or wrong? And I will say, pro-life advocates disagree about whether abortion's right or wrong or should be legal in that case, although most pro-life advocates would agree with the current state of abortion bans in America. They all include life of the mother exceptions. Like abortion's banned in Texas. There's a life of the mother exception. That's the case with all abortion bans. Now, I'm not implying all the abortion bans are perfect, or they all get the lines drawn exactly right. It's a little bit messy, because it's hard to even name, this is a circumstance. Because you could say, well, what about circumstance of pulmonary hypertension? Well, it's not always life-threatening, but it could be life-threatening. And what if it's combined with other conditions and creates a cascade of different conditions? Then it's really hard to give a simple answer. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Christine.
I'm going to say this, having worked in medicine, and I have a friend who actually is an OBGYN, and she actually committed abortions previously in her career, and we've talked about this. A situation where a mother's life is at risk is a triage type of situation for a medical provider. So you have a situation where if I don't do something, perhaps 2 people will die, but maybe I can save one of them. Versus an elective abortion where 2 people are just fine. If I do something, one might die. Does that make sense? So you have to kind of distinguish the difference. And in most cases, or in a lot of cases, the quickest thing and the thing that's going to save a woman's life is actually not an abortion, but it might be a C-section or something else. But it's really important to care for women that are in those situations or have had a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy. Maybe a similar type of procedure, but your intention is different. Does that make sense? So it's just helpful, I think, sometimes to think about it as a triage type thing of, I'm actually trying to save a life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, that's a good point. I'm going to take one more question and then we'll turn it back to Luke here. Yes, please.
So where I am right now, I feel like I don't fall really comfortably on either side of this debate, pro-life or pro-choice. Can I tell you what my main hang-up with pro-life still is?
Great.
Because I love what you've talked about today. I'm so glad you are not the people in that video. But I keep hearing you say that the best thing to do is sympathize and say, oh my gosh, rape, yes, that's horrible. That should never happen to anyone. But, or yes, poverty is horrible. That's a terrible situation. I wouldn't want anyone to be in that situation. But, and all of these buts, and of course it doesn't happen that fast, you know, there's a smooth transition there and you get to a new topic. But what I keep wanting to say is, no, hold on. You've sympathized with the issue, but you haven't addressed it. I want to stop before that, but like, this is a problem. The life of unborn children is probably also a problem, but you've decided seemingly almost arbitrarily that it's the biggest problem, and we're just gonna steamroll 10 other problems because of that. Like, yes, that sucks, I agree, that's awful. Too bad, this is more important. That doesn't feel like a morally sound position I can get behind. There's something missing there.
Great, so I'm really glad that you spoke up, I'm glad that you said this. It's never I'm very sensitive in my conversations to this dynamic of, oh, you're making a good point, but, right, so and I think the way you just characterized this is correct to what we're, I think you got the fact that we're not intending that, right? We're not intending a sort of superficial common ground. Like everything we said about being relational here, or caring about the woman who was raped, is genuine for its own sake. And I do think it makes my conversations more productive. It's practically useful. But it's also the right thing to say because it's true. For example, if I say, yeah, that was really wrong, what happened to her? That would be practically useful in the conversation because it would make the listener more willing to hear my next thing I want to say. But I'm not just trying to get to the next thing. I genuinely am not. I'm genuinely trying to sit there in that pain with that person. The reason that you have felt, the reason there sometimes seems to be this dynamic of, okay, I agree that's tragic, but is only this one reason. We're trying to make the point tonight that if you're gonna argue for abortion being legal, or if you're gonna argue that it's right, you're gonna have to argue that the unborn is not a human being, or you're gonna have to make some sort of argument about the woman's right to her body that supersedes or overshadows, trumps the unborn's right to life. So I'm not intending at all. Yeah, that's an important point you're making. I'll even spend 10 minutes saying it's important, but now let's really get to the real stuff. I'm only saying that's really important for its own sake. Let's sit there. Now, are we talking about whether abortion is right or wrong, whether it should be legal? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about how can we care for all the people involved? What are we talking about? And I might even put that question to the person. Because if they want to talk about whether abortion should be legal or whether it's right or wrong, I can't ignore the question of, is the unborn a human being? But I've tried to be careful tonight. I think Christina's tried to be careful to not imply that's the only question. Because these other questions really do matter. And the fact that the woman didn't get to consent to having sex might be relevant to whether abortion's right or wrong. That would be an important thing we might need to consider. But whether abortion's right or wrong would have to at least take into account whether the unborn's a human or not at some point. Does that help at all? Come back at me.
I think so. I like what you're saying. You say these other issues do need to be taken into account. I think
for their own sake, and that's really important to me. I didn't mean to cut you.
Yes.
Keep going.
I just think I still haven't heard a comprehensive pro-life argument that I'm totally fully on board with, because I don't hear that being addressed for its own sake. I'm only hearing the one point. And so without that being addressed for its own sake, I'm still not 100% convinced that this is the best way to care for all the people involved.
Okay.
Not everything's being addressed.
Yeah, I think I'm tracking with what you're saying. I'm gonna let you jump in, and then I might make a final comment.
Well, I was just saying, I think there is a middle question. We just maybe haven't had time to pull it in. But it's the question is abortion the only solution in each of these situations? If a woman is raped, if a woman is poor, if it's gonna sidetrack a woman's education, is abortion the only option for her? Or does our society actually have some things in place to address those needs? And the answer is yes, but sometimes we're just not aware of it.
Is this getting closer to your concern?
Sorta. If I heard those other options talked about more, that would put me at ease somewhat.
I mean, let me say this, that I wrote a 20-page paper that we can get through on our notes page that's at the bottom in the footer. It's a 20-page paper about a bodily rights argument. We try to put it in its strongest form. It's called the violinist argument. So the paper's called De facto Guardian and Abortion, a response to the strongest violinist. And in that paper, I go into great detail, intellectually engaging what I take to be the strongest argument for abortion, which is bodily rights in the case of rape. So it's not just I have a right to my body, but I also had nothing to do with the sexual act through which the child came into being. So we try to deal with what is the woman's responsibility to that child if it's a real child in that case, and really engage with that at a sophisticated intellectual level. But I don't know if that's speaking to your, when you say, I don't think you're really dealing with, say, the topic of rape. I'm not sure if you mean, you're not dealing with it intellectually as a real argument for abortion, or if you mean, I'm not really taking it seriously on its own terms. Can you help me understand which of those you might be referring to, and then we're gonna, I might just give you the last word.
Say the options again?
I'm not sure, I'm asking for clarification to try to understand your concern.
Yeah,
Because I think you're saying that the argument so far tonight has not been fully satisfying to you. And I'm actually right there with you, because it hasn't been fully satisfying to me either. Because there's a lot of issues we haven't turned over this evening that I think would be worth turning over. So I think you're saying, like on the case of rape, for example, we haven't really engaged that argument for abortion. And I'm wondering if you mean intellectually, like I'm talking about I did in that paper that I suggested people could go look at. Or if you mean we really haven't engaged it, maybe on the circumstance, like on the, how does this affect the woman kind of level, or is there some other way we haven't engaged it? And if my question's not helpful, you can say that too.
Sure. Let me coalesce my thoughts. When I walk up to a presentation like this or something on the quad explaining why human life begins at conception, or why the unborn are alive and are people, I think, great, that's not the question I was asking. That's not the question pro-choice people are asking. They are, address the problems they have, address the reasons they think why abortion is the best option. Don't just say this one fact that human life starts then, this is more important than what you're saying. Like, no matter how much sympathizing you do, if this is the most important thing, it still just kind of feels like you're steamrolling.
Okay, I think I'm understanding. I think, Christina, do you want to respond or just say what you're thinking?
Yeah, I have just is your concern that pro-life people are just trying to make abortion illegal, but then there's still these circumstances that women are still gonna go through regardless, and it's just like you wish that there was just like a solution to actually help these people now that abortion is illegal?
Yeah, or even that solution should be in place before we make abortion illegal, so no one falls through in the meantime. Yeah, that's good.
Sure, yeah, and I think the pro-life movement in general, I think you could ask a lot of people in the pro-life movement, and they would absolutely agree that we can't just ban abortion, we need to actually be doing things to help these women. And so I'm just curious, in your view, if you saw that people were helping these women, would that help alleviate that concern that you have, and maybe help you be more open to the pro-life position?
I think I want that to be the first thing I see.
Okay.
And yes, it would.
Sure, yeah, and I am right there with you. I do not just want abortion banned and that's it. Go help yourself. Like, I think that's awful. As Christians, I think we're called to do better than that. And so I definitely share that concern. The reason why I actually think that we need to ban abortion regardless of whether there are these people banding together to help women or not, which I think we should have that happen, but let's just say worst case scenario, they're not. The reason why I still think it's justified is because if, let's just say hypothetically, there is just mass poverty all over the country, and women are unable to take care of their infants. And for whatever reason, it's legalized by the state to end the life of your infant, to alleviate their poverty. And you might recognize this is similar to what I was sharing with you earlier, right? Applying it to a child outside of the womb. But I think, would your intuition be that we should try to protect those infants from being killed, regardless of whether there is a solution to helping alleviate the poverty?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's not to say that you think that we shouldn't do anything about the poverty, right?
Yeah.
That's just saying that you recognize that the preeminent issue at stake here is the lives of those infants. Okay, so we're coming from the pro-life position is we see that these circumstances are real and they're valid, but we also see that the preeminent issue at stake is that the lives of the unborn are being taken away. Not to say that there aren't other important issues, but there's this hierarchy, if you will, of problems, and we need to start by dealing with the most dominant, heinous problem before we can really get to the other ones. And ideally, we would get to those other ones at the same time, if that makes sense.
Sure. The fact that we agree on the heinousness levels of some of those problems, but disagree on the others. Is this incredibly heinous or less heinous? That makes me less comfortable addressing the contested one first. But I understand you.
Sure, and I missed the wrong word to use there. I guess I mean just like, a mass genocide of, I'm not even, like, let's just say that there was a mass genocide of like 5-year-olds, right? For whatever reason, people don't like 5-year-olds.
Some pharaoh didn't like it.
That needs to be addressed right now. And so we need to handle that. So that's kind of where we're coming from. But I think it would be wrong to just ban abortion and just not care about the women.
Do you have a follow-up that you wanna, anything you wanna say in response?
I guess just the fact, like I said, that it's easy to convince myself that that bigger problem, like you said, is not actually as big a problem as I think. Like, you know, it's really easy to say that's not a human being, it's a clump of cells. It's not hard to convince myself of that. That argument makes sense. So it's hard to give that so much weight that I can say, yeah, it's okay to address this first, despite the other problems it may exacerbate in the process. It's hard to say that that cost is worth it when this might not be anything.
Yeah.
That's where I said.
No, I appreciate what you've said. I'm gonna let that be our last word. So, Luke?
I'll close this out super fast, but first, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for sticking around. Okay, I'm gonna speed through a couple of announcements. And then I don't know how late you guys are sticking around or if you're out of here right away.
Stay for a few minutes.
But if anybody maybe has some straggling questions, you might be able to snag them.
We'll be out on campus tomorrow. You
Oh,
can also
awesome.
ask those straggling questions tomorrow.
Oh, perfect.
We'll be out there.
That's right.
Even better.
And bring friends to ask questions. I'm sure they love.
An idea.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll be around.
We'll only be here for a couple minutes, cause come see us tomorrow.
Yeah. What times will you be out in the plaza?
9 to 3.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, then if you have questions, ask them, and if you have other people who you think would have questions or benefit from a conversation, definitely invite them to come talk. I'm sure you guys would love that. Okay, super quick announcements. First one is t-shirts. We still have them. If you didn't pick up your t-shirt in the previous week, talk to Carl. So if you ordered one, talk to him, pay him, you'll get the t-shirts, they're there. Second one, we are still meeting next week. It's our last meeting this semester. So be there next week. What we're gonna do is similar to like Ratio Christmas, still love that, and other things, right, where we're like dialoguing together. So we're gonna go over a couple questions, and what I would encourage you to do is we have some questions lined up potentially, but Brian, can you do me a favor? If you get a black marker and just write on the whiteboard there next to Venmo Carl, just write questions, and then underneath, if any of you have like ideas for questions of like, I'd really like to talk through this one in a group, write them down. Just go back there and write them, and we will definitely like evaluate them as the team, and we want to talk about what you guys think would be beneficial. So yeah, if it's things we talked about or not, or if you see one up there that you really like, just give it like a check mark or something. That way we can know if there's any like super burning questions that we've gone over and that we can discuss together that people really want to know about. So yeah, be here next week. It's gonna be fun. It's our last meeting, so it'll be more low key, just hanging out, talking together. Again, like we were talking about tonight, there's really nothing like actually dialoguing. And so having a chance to even just mock dialogue with each other or just brainstorm and think through them, super helpful, and super helpful for dredging up, maybe the talks that we had in like February that you just remember nothing about other than the title. So I would definitely encourage being here. Last thing is Anchor is this Friday. We're hosting Anchor as Ratio Christi. We're very excited. If you don't know what Anchor is, it's really just when all the Christian ministries on campus get together and just have a night of fellowship and worship. And it's a super good time. Everyone is welcome. Nobody's barred out. We want everybody to come. And so we're very excited for it. So invite people that you know. If you'd like to come, there's free dinner. It's going to be Costco pizza and some other things. So definitely let everybody know and bring them. I know that Costco pizza is a bigger pull than hanging out with a bunch of Christians, but we're also having Dr. Doyama. Most of you know him. He's coming and he's speaking on Colossians 2. We're very, very excited. So definitely come, give him an audience since he's driving up here from the Springs. I think that's everything. Nope. Matt?
Somebody.
Yes, thank you so much. I totally forgot. Chris is, I'll let you explain.
I'll be like 2 minutes.
He's going to give a brief message on just what you do with Students for Life.
Great. Yeah, so thank you for having me. Thanks, Jeff A, for coming as well. So my name's Chris. I'm the president of the Students for Life Club here at Mines. And the Students for Life Club basically is what it is. We are helping young mothers and we're trying to protect life from conception, basically. And a bit like what Ian was saying earlier about how there are these other issues. And that's a huge part of what CSM Students for Life does as well. We try and work with young mothers in the area. We do pregnancy resource center outreach. We worked with, there's 2 different pregnancy resource centers we help. We do diaper drives every semester as well. However, our numbers are thinning by the semester. We usually have about 6 to 7 people come every week. But my vision, I'm graduating, and so I'm trying, and thank you to Luke for having me here, because I'm trying my best. I've been trying my best to kind of outreach to all the different people, mainly Christian groups, that I feel would be enthused by this topic and want to do more. And so if you're interested, if you felt as though this topic is something you want to do more let me know. I'll be at the front as you guys leave with the group me. And hopefully my plan before I graduate is to kind of have a solid pro-life club on campus that goes beyond religion, culture, Christian denomination, everything. Because we all share a common core value in believing in the value of human life. And I think that's a really important thing to have on a college campus. And so if you're interested, let me know. I'll be at the front with the QR code. Thanks.
Awesome. To most of you, obviously I know like basically all of you and a lot of you come to Ratio Christi regularly. I would super highly encourage it. I got to talk to Chris about like a week ago, just for a little bit, and we chatted about what Students for Life does, and he just explained it. But it's really cool to see students coming together because of like a care, right? For helping single mothers, helping people in times of need, spreading information that we think is important because of what we believe on this. It's not just like we have to do this, we need to argue with people. Like there's a heart behind it, and I think that's super cool. And obviously we believe this is a very, very important topic. And we talked about that a little bit tonight of maybe why. And so I would really, really highly encourage it. Definitely join the group meet just so that you can know they bring in speakers.
Yep.
So definitely join the group meet at the least. And I would really encourage, find ways to get plugged in. It's a cool thing, and I think he has a cool vision for the future. So thanks. Okay,
Also,
I'm gonna praise.
They have the best version of Blaster.
We do.
Your poster is the best blaster I've ever seen. The little stuffed one.
You might be asking the wrong guy.
Both of them.
Which one? With the dynamite?
Yes, that one.
Yes, yeah. we try and bring that out so that they know we are minds people and they don't kick us off campus.
Sweet. Okay, as per usual, I am gonna pray us out really quick, and then you're free, you're good, grab donuts and leave. Dear Lord, thank you for this evening. Thank you for this time. Thank you for all the members of Justice for All who took their time to come here, talk to us students on campus, have good dialogues and just throwing conversations, and then talk to us here tonight. Lord, we pray that you equip us and get us to think and to think deeply about these things, not just to push them aside, but to care about them, care about the impacts, care about those who are hurting and in need, and that we could walk out of here with a new heart for these issues and a new encouragement and confidence that we can talk to people about these and have fruitful and caring conversations and build relationships through that. That we wouldn't just store this mentally, but we would actually apply it and build important relationships through that. So thank you for all that you're doing. Bless each person as we continue through the end of the semester, as we near finals and it gets hectic. Give us discipline, give us strength and encouragement to remember that you're still working through it all. In your name we pray, amen. Awesome.
If you want to take the interactive guide, feel free, or you can just leave it on the table.
Take it,
I see it.
I didn't want to say it.
I figured since we
Especially because you need them for the town.
Thanks for coming, man.
Have you seen their movie? It just causes him.
You're probably in the book somewhere.
Tired still. My sleep's been screwed. Everybody's gonna like wait for me. I'm like, oh.
If I was quicker, I would have.
Remind me when I see you. Really? Is it good?
We set a presentation. They'll be like, oh, that's right.
Especially after Friday, like, sit up and I just sit there. I know you did. I guess.